נברך את מעיין חיינו, שכינת העולם שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה, לזמן הזה.
Shalom, my name is Rabbi Aaron Alexander, and I am an Associate Dean of the Ziegler School of Rabbinic Studies, the American Jewish University in Los Angeles. Recently, my family and I endured one of my least favorite but most enlightening activities. We moved. 4 years of stuff packed into one apartment, and really a lifetime of objects all coming out one by one. Closets, boxes, you couldn't believe how much stuff we had accumulated. In fact, at one point during the move, the mover looks at me, he looks at the huge truck that he had brought, and he said, "I'm sending my guys, I need another truck." It was really amazing to consider how many objects fit into such a small amount of space. In fact, I think one of the most surreal experiences we have when we move is to sit in an empty apartment after everything is gone, to look around, let the memories fill up our hearts, and say, how did this happen? How did we get everything into this apartment? This sounds like it's going to be an episode of Hoarders. It's actually not. It's real. I also remember the first time I was old enough to drive through the town that I grew up in, a small northwestern Indiana space. I first went to the gargantuous house that I spent 13 years of my life in, expecting to see a mansion. It looked tiny. I went to the playground that I used to enjoy as a child. I was expecting to see the biggest jungle gym I had ever seen, exactly as I remembered it. It was tiny. I drove through the town in an amount of time I could not have imagined just a few years beforehand. What we see as adults and what we see as children, simply a matter of perception. Sometimes there are spaces that feel very small but contain a tremendous amount. This idea actually comes from the magical world. You know it most prevalently from Mary Poppins. Mary Poppins, when she is doing the work that she does, carries a bag with her. It's a finite bag, but it has an infinite amount of space, which is to say she can pull out object after object after object. It's a trick clowns use on a regular basis. They call it in the magical world, the magic bag of holding. And it captures our imagination like nothing else. For those of you who are more in tune with Harry Potter, you might remember a famous Quidditch tournament where everybody sets up their very finite and tangible tents. You open up the flap, you look inside, and it's a terribly large mansion. Small space, a small container, infinite potential. This idea, the magic bag of holding, actually comes out of the Jewish tradition, or we'd like to think that it comes out of the Jewish tradition. I want to remind you of Noah's Ark. Something really intense and unbelievable about Noah's Ark is that every single animal in the world, either 2 or 7 of them, depending on how you count and how you read, fit into this large, but not too large boat. The commentators, especially the Ramban, ask, how is it that a boat, a big boat, a love boat-sized boat, can actually contain all of those animals? His answer, it's a very particular kind of miracle. Hechzik muat et hamirubeh. A small space captures a large amount. Hechzik muat et hamirubeh. This phenomenon occurs several times in the rabbinic imagination. We're going to be reading from the book of Jonah soon. The rabbis teach us that when Jonah pops his head into the fish, he sees a great synagogue, much like the one many of you grew up sitting in on the High Holy Days. We also learned from the rabbis that the temple court, small and finite as it was, could contain as many people as wanted to be inside. There was always enough space. Hachzik muat et hamerubah. The most famous, possibly, the Pach Shemen, the one cruse of oil on Hanukkah that contained not just enough oil for one night, but for 7 more nights. Small, finite space, infinite possibilities, infinite potential. Many of us are familiar with the famous quip by Einstein that there are 2 kinds of people in the world: those who see everything as a miracle and those who see nothing as a miracle. And our tradition, the Jewish tradition, especially our legal and legislative tradition, believe that Jews ought to see the world as everything is a miracle. And in fact, there are brachot, there are blessings that we are to say upon entering the space or time of a miracle, like on Hanukkah, she'asa nisim lavotenu bazman hazeh, that miracles happened at a particular time. We also recognize that miracles happen in space and never leave. In fact, in the Shulchan Aruch, Rav Yosef Karo, picking up on the 9th chapter of Masechet Brachot, the tractate Brachot in the Talmud, teaches us in the Shulchan Aruch, Haroeh makom shenasu vonisim liyisrael, kagon me'abrot hayam. When one sees the place in which miracles happened to the people Israel, for instance, the splitting of the sea, what does one do? Mivarech she'asa nisim lavotenu b'makom hazeh. You make the blessing, Baruch, that miracles happened to our ancestors in this very place. Even though the time period for the miracle has elapsed, the space itself contains the miracle forever, eternally. It never goes away, and in fact, miracles can be added on to a particular space. In fact, also, a person who has a miracle happen to them in a particular place should make a blessing when they go back to that place. Haroeh makom shena'asa nes le'achid, she'asa li nes b'makom hazeh. If you happen upon a place in which you encountered a miracle, you make a blessing there. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asa li nes b'makom hazeh. For a miracle happened to me in this place. Our Ashkenazic forebearer, Rav Moshe Israelis, adds on something remarkable to this section of the Shulchan Aruch. What he says is it's not only space that contains miracles, but human beings as well. He comments, Yesh omrim, there are those who said to hu hadin, that this is also the ruling to make a blessing, im roeh ha'adam shena'asa lo hanes. If a miracle happens to a person, mivarech alav kamoshe mivarech hamakom shena'asa vo hanes. Bless upon the person exactly as you would bless upon the space where the miracle happened. What blessing does one make? She'asa nes la'adam hazeh, that a miracle happened to this person. What would the world look like if when we came across people that we have seen every day of our lives or for the first time, we perceived them as not a means to an end, as not just an object, but as a magic bag of holding, as a space that contains an infinite amount of potential. A person's heart is filled with miraculous occurrences. I want you to think of a time that you let out one of those cries, a time of great pain, where your whole body was shaking and you couldn't stop it. Your heart in that moment becomes a magic bag of holding. Hechzik muat et hamerubah. Where does the energy come from? Where was it beforehand? It's pouring out. Think of a time when you laughed uncontrollably. You couldn't stop yourself. So much energy in that laugh. We, each of us, we are magic bags of holding. Friends, it's Elul, and it's important for us to recognize that for us to make a difference in the world, we need to leave our Daled Amot. are 4 cubits. We need to step outside the world. There's so much broken and so much to fix. But Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, the days in between, if nothing else, force us to reimagine the way in which we come in contact with the world. To take space that is usually trivialized, to take people that are often treated as objects, and to see them as miraculous, to see them as full of miracle. Hechzik muat et hamirubeh. Elul is asking us to see the world in a different way, to see the infinite potential and possibility, to reimagine what the world can be. And we can do that by changing the way we interact with both space and humanity. Shana Tova.